Scotland, a land shaped by its rugged landscapes and resilient people, but woven into its history is the story of another seafaring warrior civilization, the Vikings. The Vikings began raiding Scotland's shores in the late 8th century when they invaded Iona. What started as plunder soon became settlement when they realised that Scotland was rich in fertile land. Norse heritage remains etched into our language, place names, and even our DNA, and I can't think of a more exciting civilization to share a connection to. Towering over their enemies, they were giants among men, their imposing stature only adding to their fearsome reputation. Their helmets, contrary to popular myth, bore no horns, but their eyes burned with the hunger for battle. Armed with axes sharp enough to cleave shields in two, swords forged with precision, and spears that could strike an enemy down from a distance, the Vikings were a force of nature. But it was their long ships, sleek, fast, and designed to navigate both open seas and narrow rivers that made the Vikings unstoppable. These vessels would carry the Vikings from the known world, from Scandinavia to the coasts of Scotland, where they would leave their mark on our history. To truly understand how the Vikings interacted with Scotland and its people, I took a trip to the Govan Stones. These ancient carvings housed in Govan Old Parish Church reveal a story of conflict, power, and cultural exchange. Today we speak with Tom Horne, an expert on the Govan Stones and all things Viking. He'll help us unravel the secrets of these artefacts and tell us what they mean about Scotland's Viking history.
If we're talking about the Vikings, we are talking about the Clyde Bittons that made some of the stones that you're seeing behind us, because this was a kingdom that was here before. The Clyde Bittons were based at Dumbarton Rock, or Alclute as they called it, further up the Clyde, that way. What happens is the Vikings, as they tend to do, appear and mess things up. So they're based at Dumbarton Rock. The Vikings besiege it in the year 870. And at that stage, this kingdom has to reinvent itself. It used to be known as the Kingdom of the Alclute of Dumbarton Rock. After that point, in the historical sources, it's referred to the Kingdom of Strathclyde, so the valley, the strath of the Clyde. And their interest is more the Clyde proper and down even into Cumbria. So without the Vikings, you maybe don't get the kind of type of stone carving that we see here. And the kind of stone carving we get is some of the best stone carving in early medieval Britain and Ireland, and they're known as the Govan Stones. There are dozens of them, and they've all been discovered from the site that's around us now. If you look at Govan Stones, say on Google Maps, historic mapping of the area, you see it's got a sort of heart shape to it. And if anyone knows a site like Iona, you get these early medieval Christian sites that have these kind of almost organic shaped churchyards around them. And this is preserved in the landscape. So we've got burials dating back here to about AD 500. So this site has been used for burials, for Christian burials, for over 1500 years.
These artefacts bridge the past and present and give us a glimpse into Viking craftsmanship and the role that they played in Scotland's history. Scotland's story is intertwined with the Norse. Through settlements and intermarriage, their legacy remains written in our blood. Genetic studies show Scandinavian ancestry is strongest in Shetland, with 44.5% of people sharing ancestry to the Vikings, in Orkney 31%, and the Western Isles sharing 22.5%. Fading along Scotland's northwest coast with 15%, but their influence isn't just in our DNA. I also spoke with Dr. Ranghild Ljosland, a sociolinguist and expert in Norse culture. With her background in language, history, and cultural heritage, I questioned her in hopes of answering some of the tough questions. Dr. Ranghild, thank you for taking the time to join me today.
So my name is Ranghild Ljosland, and I'm from Norway originally. I work now for the University of the Highlands and Islands at the Orkney campus.
Okay.
And my background was in Scandinavian studies, Scandinavian language and literature. And as part of that, I studied Old Norse language and Old Norse literature and runology, as well as modern language and literature.
I'm sure you'll be able to tell us what kind of Norse influences can we still see today, particularly in language in Scotland?
Yeah, I see some influence in the language in Orkney and perhaps even more so in Shetland. And one thing is place names, which you asked
Yeah.
about.
Yes.
Yeah, so a majority of the place names, the farm names and the names of natural features such as hills and bays and so on
Yeah.
are of Norse origin. And then you
Okay.
have the newer names such as names of streets and houses. Um, so among the farm names and nature names, you can see, for example, that the Norse names have been kept, but the pronunciation has often been changed a little bit. So now
Okay.
it can be hard to understand what
Yes.
the Norse word was. For example, the town where I live is called Kirkwall. So
Yes.
Kirk is quite easy to understand, meaning church, and it's the same word in Norse and Scots actually. So it's Kirkja in Old Norse and
Right.
Kirk in Scots. So that church bit is easy, but what about wall? Kirk wall? Is it the wall of the church? You might wonder, but
Yeah.
that comes from a word for bay,
Okay.
vager. So it's church bay. It's
Right.
just that it's been
Okay.
misunderstood and changed to Kirkwall over the years.
I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about why the Vikings first came to Scotland and what influenced them not to just raid but to settle here.
Depends on who you ask or what your specialism is, because in saga literature it's
Yeah.
portrayed in one way, whereas archaeologists can find different kind of evidence which might not
Okay.
always agree with the saga portrayal. Short answer, I suppose, would be that it's a bit of all of the above. So in Orkney saga, it claims that uh, people from Norway settled in Orkney because of a political situation in Norway where King Harald Fairhair was trying to become the ruler of all of Norway, and
Yeah.
that ended up pushing out some of the other chieftains. Um,
Okay.
but I think in reality is a combination of adventure and raiding and
Yeah.
also in search of new land to
Yeah.
settle and a central position for further voyages, whether that is for raiding or exploration or for trading, because it's sitting in a very central position for trading routes as well.
Yes.
Um, so when you look at Orkney, it's very green and relatively flat, and
Yeah.
the climate is mild with mild winters. And when you look at Norway, it's very steep and mountainous,
Yeah.
um, difficult to farm, and there's
Yes.
little farmland available. So I think looking at Orkney, if you're looking for somewhere to establish a farm, it's absolutely perfect.
Even my hometown Stirling, which is at the very heart of Scotland, has a tale to tell of Vikings. A story of how a wolf became the iconic animal of the city. Back in the 9th century, Stirling was a contested land, first ruled by the Picts and then taken over by Northumbrian princes Osbert and Aella. One night, as the town slept, Viking raiders were said to have crept up on the town, but they weren't the only ones awake. A pack of wolves were said to begin howling, alerting the townsfolk and allowing them to fight off the Vikings until they fled off into the night.
In tribute to their unlikely saviours, the princes painted a wolf on a banner as a symbol that still watches over Stirling today.
In 1263, King Haakon IV led a Viking army to his final attempt to conquer Scotland, but the weather itself would play a key role in his defeat.
Haakon's fleet, battered by weeks of harsh seas, finally arrived at Largs, but the stormy weather gave the Scots, led by King Alexander III, a critical advantage. With rain and fog obscuring their movements, the Scots used the rough terrain to pick off the Vikings one by one, their arrows finding their marks in the chaos. The Vikings were exhausted and disorientated, and couldn't coordinate their attack. The storm damaged their fleet, leaving them vulnerable.
The Battle of Largs essentially ended Viking ambition in Scotland. King Haakon and his army retreated, and just 1 year later, the Treaty of Perth was signed, officially ending the Viking era in Scotland and its Isles.
Though the Viking age in Scotland eventually came to an end, their legacy remains. They were great warriors, travellers, and masters of the sea. From artefacts to folklore, the echoes of the Vikings are still with us, reminding us of our shared history.